Welcome to Biztech's Enterprise Technology Show, where we feature tech companies that are innovating in the large enterprise space. We also talk about burning technology questions or topics that are on top of mind for companies. Now, our featured company today is Rubrik, a cloud data management company based in Palo Alto, California, which was founded in 2014. We also are going to take a deep dive into ransomware, a crime that is becoming more common and increasingly more public and dangerous. Here to tell us about Rubrik and to understand ransomware and how to protect our companies against it is Kamal Brar. He's the Vice President and General Manager of Asia Pacific and Japan at Rubrik. Kamal, welcome to the show.
Brian, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and appreciate your time.
Now, Kamal, can you start by just giving us a history of Rubrik and its overview of what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, Rubrik, like any other Silicon Valley technology company, was founded by a bunch of technology guys, actually a lot of them from IIT, India, in fact. So our founders were heavily focused on engineering background. And I think what they identified as a real problem or a gap in the current market was the data management space has been, it's a huge, massive opportunity, $50 billion addressable market, but it still very heavily relies on legacy technologies. And so, we felt as a company, and obviously our founders felt as a company, we had a better way of innovating and disrupting and redefining the data management paradigm. And so that's what we built out with Rubrik, essentially as a company. We wanted to make it easier for our customers to go from the hybrid on-prem and to the multi-cloud world that we live in today. And to do that, we want to be able to protect their data, to be able to orchestrate and automate that data journey seamlessly. So really, that's kind of what we're addressing. We're helping our customers move to multi-cloud, helping our customers protect the most critical assets in an organization, which is the data itself, and really enabling that journey through a seamless process of automation and orchestration. And that's really in a nutshell what Rubrik's trying to do at its core. Of course, we have a wonderful technology team. We have a massive presence globally as a company now. We're operating in pretty much all the regions globally, well over 1,700 employees. So we've seen massive adoption of Rubrik, and as we grow and continuously evolve as a company.
Now, Kamal, what's interesting about Rubrik, besides your stellar growth, is the stellar list of investors that you have. So you've raised a total of just over $500 million on a valuation of over $3 billion. So you're unicorn several times over. You've got the likes of Lightspeed Ventures, Greylock Partners, Bain Capital, Khosla Ventures. You've got people like John Chambers, former chairman of Cisco, former chairman of Microsoft, CEO of Snowflakes, as your investors. How has the company been able to attract these big names to invest in you?
Yeah, really good question. I think, again, they feel just like Bipul does as our CEO and co-founder, they feel that we're really redefining a paradigm. We're disrupting a legacy space, 20 years, 30 years of technology, which has not been disrupted. So I think they see us as an innovative company, which is redefining the cloud data management platform. And in that essence, I think, given the opportunity, given the scale of the disruption that we're driving and the growth, I think that's really the opportunity that, Frank Slootman or some of our investors like John Thompson, et cetera, we've just got a very good class, world-leading class of investors, and not just investors in individual context, but as you said, Greylock, Lightspeed, et cetera. So, I think we're very privileged to have these guys on board, but they see the opportunity, they see the addressable market and what we're delivering. I think what was fascinating is I had the privilege to open our India office with John Chambers. We've made significant investments in our India business, and not just India, but Asia Pacific as a whole. And speaking to him and just getting his perspective on how he's thought through these investments. And I think one of the key comments he made to me was, Rubrik was really not just redefining, but the pace of the innovation and the pace of growth has not been seen in the Valley in any other enterprise class or segment of technology companies. So what we've achieved in Rubrik in the last 7 years as a company has been truly leading and way beyond what other comparable technology companies have achieved in that period of time. So I think that's what John said, when I still remember meeting him in person. He said, look, this was kind of world-class and redefining a new segment for the industry.
Now, give us an overview of some of the products and services that you offer and how they help your customers.
Yeah. So look, at the core of our products, of course, we started with the use case of backup and recovery. So we have cloud data management. That's the core product that Rubrik offers. And that it allows our customers to protect, recover, and really automate that journey, as I said, from on-prem all the way to cloud. Now, in addition to that, as we've evolved as a company, we realize companies want more and more evolution towards SaaS and applications in the cloud. And so we've evolved our products to go beyond the backup recovery to data governance and really understanding how we provide more insights into and data services into the data that we actually protect. So we have Polaris SaaS offering, which is really a core part of our evolution as a company as we move into providing true insights into the data that we protect. So Polaris is our SaaS offering, in addition to our cloud data management, which is the core. Built on top of that is Polaris SaaS. And with Polaris SaaS, we provide ransomware protection. We provide additional data insights around data governance to give you better clarity. You know, if the data that you're protecting, for example, may have sensitive data, PII data, or credit card information, or other sensitive type of data. So with Polaris, we're able to understand the workloads that we protect and the applications, and that gives us tremendous amount of power capabilities in recovery. So we can go down to not just recovering the information, but down to specific files or particular users that we want to recover. And that's a unique value proposition that Rubrik brings. In addition to that, we're now rolling out with our latest release of 6.0, more cloud native services. So protecting applications such as Office 365 out of the box, right? So we want to be able to seamlessly provide this, not just in your own environment, but also in the cloud SaaS world. So protecting more workloads in the SaaS world. With Amazon, we've released RDS protection. So Amazon's own database service, for example, we protect that now with cloud native. So as a company, we've evolved from protecting your data, which may be on premise, to how do we make that shift towards the cloud and protecting it on the cloud or private clouds, to now evolving into data governance beyond on-prem to hybrid, all the way into the cloud. And now we moved into SaaS. So we've really evolved as a company over the last 7 years into today what I believe is the most comprehensive cloud data management platform.
And Kamal, one of the things is also the fact that you have solutions at the large enterprise space, but also for smaller companies. Could you kind of walk us through some of your solutions in the smaller space and also some of the key customers that you have in Asia?
Yeah, so I think what we've found is, of course, we have many large enterprise customers, as you pointed out, Brian. But in addition to that, we see a demand for some of our partners in the region, in particular in ASEAN and in Australia, and somewhat in Japan, where they have very small customers, or customers who don't have the IT infrastructure capability or skill sets to go provide an easy way to protect against ransomware. They want to be able to consume these services on demand and at will. And what we've done is we've partnered with organizations like in Australia, Takala, for example. In ASEAN, we'll be releasing a service through one of our partners in the region, and in Japan through IIJ, where SMEs are able to get access to Rubrik services as a consumption offering. And what that means is we're able to consume these services to protect your applications, protect your data workloads, without having to have the knowledge to operate, invest, or particularly make an upfront investment in terms of CapEx. And so this could be a very simple way for you to consume. Of course, it's all about time to value, making it easy for our customers to consume these services without having the know-how of doing it. So I think we really see that opportunity, given the sophisticated nature of these attacks. We want customers to focus on what they do best, which is running their businesses, running their operations, not worrying about how they're going to protect against ransomware and all the complexity to do that.
Now, speaking of ransomware, let's zoom in on that topic and also data. Now, what makes data visibility really crucial for digitalized businesses?
Look, I think fundamentally with the data visibility, you want to understand tomorrow if you're compromised in any way or form, what does that impact mean for you in terms of, is there data loss? You have data leakage, is that data exposed? Very high number of incidents have happened recently in ASEAN where data leakage has occurred. I think the most recent 3 or 4 that come to mind, we had Tokopedia being compromised, 91+ million users data leaked. We had STE leak some confidential data, which was unfortunately compromised, and even Redmart for that matter. So, some very large ASEAN-based companies who have had, unfortunately, leakage or compromised, their systems have been compromised. So the key part to that is understanding what that impact is. Something that we've coined as blast radius. So when you are compromised, what is the impact of that compromise? How do you understand what's actually being potentially exposed? And what does that mean in terms of recovery? Do you understand how long it's going to take to recover, or potentially can you not recover? So from that perspective, having insights into the impact and assessing that impact is critical for not just determining whether you can recover, but the time to recover. And something that we refer to a lot as, Brian, is we work with our customers and partners on building a remediation plan, because what we know is it's not whether you'll be attacked or compromised, it's when you're attacked and compromised, how quickly can you get back up? And of course, more recently,
that's the critical thing, isn't it? How quickly you can get back up.
Yeah, and it's the hardest one. I mean, if you ask some of our customers what's on top of mind for them, they always think through, okay, we know this is a problem, but today we don't proactively think of how do we test it, how quickly can we get back up, how quickly, what do we know that will not be impacted? So having that remediation process not just defined, but also tested and validated continuously is critical. And of course, that determines the success of your execution.
Now, ransomware attacks we talked about data being compromised, but ransomware attacks have been really on the uptrend in the past 2 years. The most recent, obviously, which is very, very public, was the Colonial Pipeline story. Walk us through what are the trends that have happened and how a company like that recovered?
Yeah, look, I think Colonial Pipeline, of course, was a very large scale attack, but we've seen similar attacks across the automotive, across various, what I would term as almost mission critical workloads. These are critical infrastructure offerings for countries in some cases. So what we're seeing is an uptake of attacks against healthcare or hospitals, given the crisis that we're in today with COVID. They're an obvious target for, unfortunately, the bad guys to go after. In addition to that, you mentioned Colonial Pipeline. Their challenges, of course, is the scale and sophistication of these attacks means they've got to continuously evolve their processes. They've got to understand that, if you listen to the hearing of that particular incident, one of the areas was, did you have the process in place, and did you validate and test these processes? And I think what came very clearly in that was they did have a very strong process. They did have a very strong capability, and they had the relevant backups to recover. But a decision was made at the point in time from their CEO to go and pay the ransomware. I think what was interesting was they obviously paid the ransom in that particular case as per the hearing, as I understand, but they also leveraged their backups. And in fact, I think the CEO made a comment that the backups were critical for them to recover actually quicker than they expected. And I think that's a very important part, because once you're compromised, the first place that these ransomware attacks are going after is the backups, and making sure that you have that protected and safe is a critical part of being successful in recovery.
No, and so this, because it's all automated, this contributed obviously to the recovery, the quick recovery from the ransomware attack, correct?
Correct.
So could you then give us an example of how customers use your products to recover or perhaps combat ransomware? Because on your website, for example, you have a ransomware recovery for dummies right in the front page.
Well, I think it's top of mind. As you said, a lot of recent incidents have made this even more compelling for our customers. I'll give you an example. More recently, we had Rubrik Forward, which is our annual event. One of our customers in Australia, Lang's Building Supplies, they were compromised. In fact, they were hit with a ransomware attack. And it's a fascinating interview if you get a chance for your viewers to go see. And Matt and the team there, were able to quickly identify the threat, in which case, with Rubrik, one of the capabilities that we built in is with our algorithm, our deep neural technology, we identified these threats, and we identified potential, penetration of these threats in the system. And then we go and give proactive notification to our customers on the potential threat. So in this case, they were hit, their ransomware attack happened. And within 4 hours, I think Matt talks about their process of, identifying the threat to recovery happened in hours. And that was only possible because they had our technology and obviously our Rubrik core data management offering implemented with Polaris. So with the Polaris stack, they're able to get the insights, they're able to identify the blast radius, the impact of the ransomware, and then quickly recover. And I think that's a very compelling customer story. Now, what makes this unique for Rubrik is when you are attacked, some of these systems, as I said, the bad guys will go after the backup. So when you think of ransomware, there are multiple areas. You worry about, obviously, the perimeter security, you worry about network security, you're worried about your application security, and then, of course, hardening of all the systems, OS, etc. But one of the core things that I think customers need to rethink, and which is what Rubrik's kind of, I guess, redefining, is data as the endpoint of security. Now, what tends to happen is that everyone's focused on perimeter access, endpoint security access, but the data itself is kind of like the last line of defense. Now, if you're not able to protect the data, then there's no recovery chance. And so with Rubrik, what we're saying is the cyber resiliency should be built in to the data itself. And so that's what we're thinking. We're redefining the thought process here and saying, think inside out. If your data is protected and your data is immutable, i.e. cannot be compromised, then at the end of the day, even if you do have these primitive breaches, you're not going to lose data. You're not going to be potentially exposed as significantly. And that's how we're redefining the process. And what's unique with Rubrik, of course, is we have an immutable file system. We have a zero trust architecture. In simple terms, in dummy terms, as you referenced our dummies guide, is we don't trust anyone. Even a Rubrik administrator with super access would not be able to delete, modify, append any of the backups that took place. So what that means is tomorrow, if you were compromised or hit with some type of ransomware malware, you're going to be guaranteed that your last backup that was taking place would always be the clean version of your systems and obviously your system, your whatever you're protecting, whether it's a database or Office 365. We will have the most clean copy regardless, and there's no way to delete or append that. And that's throughout immutability, throughout Atlas file system, and that's a unique proposition with Rubrik.
Now, Kamal, let's paint a scenario.
Yeah.
I'm a CIO. I'm a victim of ransomware attack. What's a checklist that you can give me to get through the first critical hours and the to-dos and not to-dos?
Yeah, so look, I think first and foremost, there are two separate teams that look after this. One is the security ops and the other is IT infrastructure. Generally, what happens is security ops are responsible for defining the potential perimeter around security, endpoint, application, etc. So the security team has to assess that very quickly. The other piece to it, of course, is the security team, after assessing the threat, will need to engage with the backup or the infrastructure team and say, what was our latest clean copy of the backup? But that entire process, I mean, the way this normally flows is you get hit by a ransomware. That means your file, in most sophisticated attacks like Colonial, they encrypt your files, yes. Right? So then you'll normally get a note saying, please pay a ransom. The next question you need to decide is, do we pay ransom or we don't pay ransom? Of course, a CIO, as you said, would likely say, I've got a team of experts in security and IT ops. I expect us to recover. And then you'll go through the process of saying, maybe I will not pay ransom, and I'll go through the process of identifying the threat. And that could take a day, could take hours, could take, in some cases, a couple of days, could even take weeks, depending on the nature of the attack and obviously the context of the blast radius, as we referred to, how much impact did that actually have? And that coordination, Brian, between IT ops and security is what we're actually making easier. So we've integrated with some of the network technologies, for example, with Palo Alto networks. So their systems can now directly engage, their incident response system can workflow directly with Rubrik. Same with ServiceNow. So we're building integration hooks into these systems so you can automate quickly between IT ops and security ops to provide a more comprehensive understanding of the nature of the attacks and then quickly provide a response to it. So I guess the checklist in short, of course, is having the procedures in place in that, and what does that look like in terms of how quickly, how many times do you actually go and simulate or test your environments? In terms of your process and procedures, are your employees or staff aware of what this means to their applications and what potential breaches could lead to in terms of outages? And what's the process of working in when you do have these outages? What systems are critical and mission critical for you to have up and running? So I think the checklist could be a people checklist, which is giving them the enablement understanding of what the process will be if you're hit. a technology checklist in terms of what do we need to do triage diagnostics on the security and IT ops side. And then, what does that mean from a recovery standpoint? And then the last piece is, of course, I think the most critical piece is really trying to simulate and make sure you continuously evolve and test these processes as an organization to make sure that you are truly ready. That's not easy to do in an SME space. And that's why I'm saying the consumption of these services through our partners makes that much easier, where they take care of that process. They provide it to you as a service, and you just pay them a fee, which is ongoing, as just like a subscription.
Another question is, wouldn't I, if I'm in a CIO of a large enterprise, also then, and you mentioned setting up 2 different teams, but a third team really to do investigation into the source of the ransomware attacks? And would that be the case? Would that be something I would do so that we understand where the vulnerabilities are?
Yeah, and look, it's in some cases, many of our customers do have a separate team for governance and audit risk and compliance, who may be responsible and engaging in the process. But what we tend to see is it's across those 3 dimensions. In some cases, that sits part of security ops. So a CISO may be working closely or reporting into compliance and security, or it could be a separate part of the org structure. But I guess in essence, it's IT ops, security operations, and then the compliance and risk part of the business, which are responsible, obviously, from a legal obligation standpoint, from a legislation standpoint, to reporting. I mean, take Philippines. Each company now in the Philippines needs to have a chief data officer. They're responsible for making sure that they have the systems or processes in place to protect the privacy of all data that's being protected. In Singapore, we have PDPA. In Malaysia, you have the same. And so, I think that there's a responsibility across all of these lines of businesses to make sure that we have the utmost technology, people, process, and obviously we adhere to the legislation as closely as possible.
Now, coming back to Rubrik now, you've got strong competitors, Acronis, Snowflake, among others. What makes you stand out in the Asia Pacific marketplace? If I'm a CIO in Asia, why should I pick you?
Yeah, so Snowflake's in a different category to us. So, we don't see them as a direct competitor, but definitely some of our competitors, Brian, are very much what I would say as what are those terms at the beginning of the call, legacy technology providers in this space. And what they've done is they've built a great software stack over the last 20, 30 years, but it's not cloud native. It's not built for today's sophisticated ransomware attacks. It's not developer friendly or through an API based approach. And that's really the premise of Rubrik. It's almost like, a really simple example, or almost the analogy would be an electric vehicle versus a petrol vehicle. You're comparing 2 different types of generations of vehicles, right? One being completely driven on a different powertrain versus one that's on batteries. So I think that's kind of how we see it. We're building the next generation, which is cloud native, API first. And that's a completely different architecture to what our competitors or some of the legacy providers have, which is more so focused on providing for the client server world. If you go back into the 90s, right, we didn't have mobile apps, we didn't have SaaS. We had Windows terminals, we had client server logins, you had a few administrators who would log in. There was no ransomware at that scale. And it's because the type of access that we have to systems today and the fundamental shift towards cloud and the architecture change means that it's a different way, it's a different standardization of technology. So I think that's what makes us very unique. We are cloud native, we are API driven. Our immutability, our file system that we built is industry leading. There are very little, there's no doubt in our belief that most of these customers who leverage our technology, we're guaranteeing our customers the most safest option to recover. And I think that's a unique value proposition with Rubrik that makes it extremely compelling. But I will tell you what's made Rubrik the most successful company it is today, and that's we've kept the simplicity at core. That means everything we do, we make it about customer-centric. Our innovation on products, whether it's on the top end to enterprise, all the way down to our SMEs, we want to make this as simple as possible for our customers. And I think that, in a nutshell, is our key differentiation. Simplicity at core, coupled with tremendous amount of innovation, which is focused around enterprise all the way down to the SME mid-market.
Now, final question, Kamal. What's the strategy for Rubrik in the Asia Pacific region moving forward?
Yeah, so Brian, what I will share with you is, we've grown massively across the region. And In the last 2 years, we've increased our investment in the region over 50%. Today, you'll be surprised, maybe astonished. Nearly 650 employees sit actually in Asia for us. So it's a very large part of our business. That just gives you the scale of our operations in Asia. We continue to invest. It's probably our fastest. Last year, Asia was the fastest growing business for us globally. So we outpaced the company in that context. So, it's a very important part of the business for us. Just thinking through, Brian, as you're aware, all your viewers are aware, there are a lot of people in this part of the world, and we run some very large scale complex systems. The systems we run in Indonesia with 300 million people are a very different scale to somewhere like Australia, which is 20 million people. So, we have the complexity, diversity as a region. And I think that makes it really interesting because we get some very specific use cases. And I think what's fascinating is we've seen more and more technology evolution, adoption in Asia on these emerging technologies than some other countries, right, where they're more risk averse. So I think the Asian mentality has been that we're willing to try and we're willing to move to the next gen because we don't have the legacy. In some cases we just didn't have it at that time. So I think that's an advantage to our region. So I'm extremely bullish about our growth opportunity here. We continue to invest and we'll continue to grow this business in Asia.
Kamal, thank you very much for an enlightening interview. I enjoyed the education about ransomware in particular.
I thoroughly enjoyed it, and hopefully all your viewers did too. Thank you so much, Brian.
Now, we've been speaking to Kamal Brar, the Vice President and General Manager, Asia Pacific and Japan of Rubrik, on Biztech's Enterprise Technology Show. I'm Brian Fernandez. This video will be on our Facebook and LinkedIn site, as well as our website, www.biztech.asia. Please like and subscribe to our various channels. Thank you very much for tuning in.